Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey toward publication. I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
I'm Christina Catane, and I write in multiple genres, including Christian dystopian fiction.
I'm Rhonda Hagerman, and I write fiction and nonfiction.
And we thank you so much for joining us today. If you like this podcast or are blessed by it in any way, we pray that you would take some time and subscribe and like below. I think it's below, so that you can never miss an episode of our podcast as we go live.
Yes.
This is the time of our podcast where we spend time talking with each other, and we like to call it the What's Up. It's a time where we check in with one another and see where we are in our writing and mostly in our personal lives as well. So what's up, Rhonda? Let's start with you.
Well, in my writing, Mom and I are doing so well on this draft that we're working on. We did extend the deadline a little bit because we did add, it is going to be a novel after all, but we're so excited about knowing where it's heading, and the words are really flowing right now. So
That's awesome.
we're happy.
Yay.
So are we.
Well, what are you doing, Tina?
Oh, I meant I was happy that your words are flowing. I get to read them. Today was a little bit of a sad day for me. When my son, who is going to be 16 in August, was first born, I joined a MOPS group, which, for those of you who don't know, is Mothers of Preschoolers. And through a series of unfortunate events, became the coordinator. And had to go for the next year, had to go find a mentor mom for this group. And I found the most wonderful woman I've ever known in my life to be our mentor mom. And she was just so beautiful, just such a beautiful soul. And she was so kind. And she was like a living example of Christ. I mean, I just don't know how else to describe her. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she always would tell us, don't ever talk badly about your husbands. Don't complain. Always be thankful for your husbands. And she lived that out in front of us. And she was also a family therapist, and she helped me personally in a really profound way. But she passed away this morning. So that was really sad for me. And I wouldn't say that we were really close. I mean, we saw her at camp meeting, and we would wave at each other across the vast openness of the tabernacle. And sometimes we would say hello on Facebook, but she just had such a profound impact on my life through her example, her Christ-like example. And I just really wish that I could live a life that people will be saying about me what they're saying about her when I pass away. Everybody's just saying, like, she impacted people's lives. She left a legacy.
I'm really sorry for your loss, Tina.
Yeah, I saw that you had mentioned that earlier, and I did pray for you, Tina.
Thank you. And her family, I mean, they're the ones that really need the prayer.
Yeah.
So what about you, Jamie? What's up with you?
Well, it feels a little ridiculous after that to talk about my what's up. Because if you remember, last week, what was I doing? I was using fake baby foot on my feet. Right here, this stuff right here. It is called Gentle and Smooth, or Soft and Smooth Gentle Peeling Foot Mask. Let me tell you, save yourself a trip to the, what do you call it, pedicurist, and slip these sock-like applicators onto your little tootsies. And it is just gnarly but cool at the same time how much dead skin will peel off your foot. It's like a creature feature that you can grow yourself. It's really fun. And then your feet are soft after. I'm still experiencing some peeling, and I will say the secret is to soak your feet every day once you put it on. So if you need a reason to sit back with your feet in some warm water, there you go, you've got it. Because you don't want to waste your $2.98 or whatever Walmart charges for this. So
I feel like we should say this is not a commercial. We're not being compensated in any way.
No, we're
But if-
not. If you struggle with dry or flaking feet, I mean, it's really exciting to find something that will help. So I'm excited to give it another week and to see the final results and see if I'm as happy with it as I think I'm going to be. That's what's up with me. What's up with you, Jen? Aren't you excited to follow the foot peeling update?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to follow that at all. Because that's just an amazing update. I would say I've been very overwhelmed in the past week. I did not meet my February goals, which is really hard to not beat yourself up over. But I'm super close. Like I thought I was so much farther away from having book 3 done, like this version of editing, and it's honestly only like a day or 2 away, and I think I'll be done with it. So
Yay.
so I'm trying to not beat myself up. My girls, their life is chaos right now. There is so much going on. We have something going on every night of the week except for Tuesday night this week. Every other night, and same thing last week, and it's just been like crazy. But thankfully I have family and I have friends that are very helpful to help me make things happen. And so just got to keep plugging along with the books and focus on my kids, and everything will turn out great, right?
Yes, for sure. And yeah, it is hard not to beat yourself up, but you have to remember that you set the goals really high. So you have to think if you weren't striving for that goal, that you possibly would not be as far along as you are right now. So there is that to celebrate.
Right. I agree. Thank you for that. It helps me out a lot. Well, moving on to this week's topic, it is a topic that's very conversational actually for us, and we've discussed it before off camera. So we thought, well, let's do this on camera as well. So this week we were talking about reading in your genre. If you've ever been a member of any writers Facebook group or any sort of Twitter party for authors, you've probably heard the mantra, if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. And it's a saying that started from Stephen King. He is the one that actually, I believe, that originated that. So let's start off talking about that. First of all, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have to be a reader in order to be a writer?
Yeah.
I think so. I think that it was all the reading. I was a bookworm. I started out as a bookworm, I don't know, probably when I learned to read. And I never stopped reading. And I think that is what turned me into a writer. Especially, like, there were some books that really, really had a deep impact on me when I was a kid, like Call of the Wild. And there was this book, I don't know if other people have heard of this book, but it always shocks me when they haven't, but it's the Kavik the Wolf Dog.
Never heard of
That
it.
was like...
Did you say Cabbage the Wolf Dog?
Kavik, Kavik.
Oh,
And
haven't heard of that either.
I read that book and like 12 times. And I'm not one of those people that likes to reread stuff. But that book was my favorite book and had such a huge impact on me. And I just wanted to be able to recreate that.
That's awesome.
In
I'm
my
not
writing.
laughing at you, what you're saying, Tina. I'm laughing at the fact that now the next dog I own, I'm going to name it Cabbage. That's just such a great name.
Rhonda, I think you were about to pipe up there too. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you have to write or you have to read to be able to write. Because I think, well, okay, I'll tell you my history. I started reading super young. As soon as I got my first book, I picked up another one, and it's just been like a stone rolling down the hill ever since. My first books were Little House on the Prairie, and then, Encyclopedia Brown and Harriet the Spy, and Nancy Drew. And, it's occurred to me that I have loved mysteries my whole life. So I think it's natural to go into the mystery genre.
So that's a great transition then, Rhonda. So we talked about that it's important to read. Do you guys think it's important to read in your genre?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. moving on.
Well, that's difficult to answer if you are someone who writes multi-genre. I suppose first, I think I want to address that first question because that advice can be paralyzing, I think, just like any other bit of must-do writer advice. Because I was a bookworm as a child, but as we entered a digital age, I find now most of my reading is either blogs or essays or just Facebook posts. And whereas as a young person with only paper media in my hands, the only way that I could read was to get a book. Books have given way to shorter pieces to me. And so for me to think, oh no, since I'm not reading, I have no business writing, is actually a handicap for me. To further then say that it would be important for me to read in the genre that I want to write would further handicap me because I do write cross-genre. However, I will say that, for example, when I was reading a lot of Flannery O'Connor, she writes with a very pronounced Southern flavor. I found that I was kind of writing more in her style. So I would say that what you read will impact what you write.
All right. Would anyone else agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also write in multiple genres. Jamie focuses more on short fiction, and I tend to write longer fiction. And I have found that right now I'm working on kind of a adventure with a dog. A dog is the main character. And then I found myself reading some historical fiction from the Civil War. And then I was struggling to write what I was trying to write because my brain wanted to write Civil War stuff. And that's actually, I always said I became a writer because I have a constant narrative going on in my mind anyway. And I figured I might as well write it down. And so I found myself like laying in bed at night with this Civil War narrative going on in my head when I should have been focusing on dogs in the woods and Alaska and stuff. So it really impacts me if I start to read something that's not in the genre I'm writing in at the moment.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, I have dabbled in songwriting, and it can be a similar thing that can happen to you. What you're listening to could flavor what you produce. So yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
Jamie, I would say that in your case, you are such a natural storyteller that I could give you 2 words right now, and you could just tell a story just off the top of your head. It just comes so naturally to you. So I think you're one of the rarities. I am not that kind of person. If I wasn't so immersed in the mystery world in books, then I wouldn't be able to, I would have to study to find out what the trope should be and what my readers would expect. And I don't think you have that problem.
Well, I think I may have that problem in the future, and I appreciate the compliment. I don't mean to just dismiss that. So thank you. That's very kind. But I do think it is important, if you plan to ever try to write to market or find a niche for your writing, if you are someone who tends to blend genre or cross genre, you're going to have trouble when you try to sell the book. So someone like me might have to put in all of that work that you're talking about to make sure that you're writing a book that's marketable, if that becomes something that is important to the author. I kind of feel like I'm rambling. Did any of that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And it actually kind of leads into what I was going to say, because I think I'm on the opposite spectrum of Jamie. I don't write cross genre. I'm very specific. I write Christian romance, historical Christian romance, though I do dabble a little bit in contemporary. I want to maybe move into that as well. But right now I'm historical. I read Christian romance because I enjoy Christian romance. I write Christian romance because I enjoy Christian romance, but I read it for genre purposes because it helps me to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of what is selling in my market.
Yeah.
So I try to find best-selling authors and I read them, but I also try to find indie writers, and I not only learn like what the good indie writers are doing and what's selling, but when I come across a bad one, and I can see why it's bad, I go back and I make sure I'm not making some of those same mistakes, that I'm not having unrealistic plot changes, no like all of a sudden, oh, well, then this problem's fixed in an unrealistic way, which happens in a lot of really poorly written things that I read recently. So for me, I'm going to read in my genre anyway, because that's what I enjoy. I'm kind of a one-trick pony, but it helps me to be able to kind of remain current in what's selling, so that as I write, I keep that in mind as well to write to market. So,
That's a really good point, Jen.
and I've read some bad stuff recently that I wonder, gosh, how in the world is that selling? But anyway, I don't think all of it is. So we'll just say that. We'll just leave it there. Okay. So, all right. We talked about multiple genres. What about reading outside of your genre? We talked a little bit about how if you're writing something specific, it might take you off course. Now, I will say, because I will read clean romance. That's not Christian romance. And I don't feel that it distracts me from what I'm doing either. And I read a lot of contemporary that does not seem to distract me from what I'm doing, but it might inspire me to try to do that, because I kind of like to read contemporary as well. Do you guys think that there might be some positives to reading outside of your genre, or just negatives?
I think they're positive. Expand yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say. Expand your mind, and it can even be almost like, when you're you go to like a cheese tasting or whatever, and you have to cleanse your palate. I think that it can have that kind of effect, to just take a break and read something completely different than what you're writing and what you normally read, and kind of cleanse your palate of your mind, so that you can come fresh to your writing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered it. I totally agree with everything that you said.
I think too that maybe some well-timed reading outside of your genre, like let's say you finished a novel and you're getting ready to go into the editing phase, or you're editing something and you just need to like not be thinking about, let's think about it. Editing can sometimes be killer. So I found that I think I read more contemporary when I'm editing than when I'm actually writing, because probably for that purpose is I just need to not be in the world of Christian historical romance sometimes, because it's just overwhelming to me.
Jennifer, do you ever read anything that's completely out of your genre, like science fiction or fantasy?
All right, so I love science fiction. Like this is like, I'm a total Star Trek nerd, Star Wars nerd. But the funny thing is, I don't read it very often. And we've had this conversation, Ron and I have, that it's kind of weird that I don't, because I read a lot. Like I read 4 books last week. Like I just like to read a lot. But no, I haven't. And I wonder if I were to read more outside the genre, if I would have the same issue that what Tina was bringing up, that it would affect what I'm writing and might distract me from what I'm writing. So I should probably get any suggestions. Maybe I should try.
I don't know, but maybe you could become the Jules Verne of historical Christian romance.
Make up your own whole new genre.
That would be kind of fun, actually. I gotta admit.
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You know what else I found? Backtrack a little bit. Sorry. About an advantage I found from reading within my genre. I've also learned to take it easier on myself. As I'm writing and I'm editing, sometimes I just feel like it's just not good enough. And I like stress out about like every little word being perfect, and go through 5, 6, 7 edits and still not feeling confident enough to be able to hit the button that says publish. And then I'll find, like just recently, I found that I was reading through an entire series of an author, only to discover like that she wasn't like following an outline. I could tell as a writer, I could tell like her disaster points were not happening at 25% and 50% and 75%. Like I really structure my story so that the reader is not disappointed and the story doesn't lag. And there were times in some of the things I read that I thought it was lagging a little bit, but I kept reading because it was entertaining enough. And I had to step back and say, this is good for me to read, for me to realize that my stories are good. I don't have to have them perfect. There's readers out there that will enjoy my stories whether I have them exactly perfect or not. And that was actually kind of freeing for me, because you guys know that I'm still going to be the person that is going to spend a lot of time editing, but I won't have that monkey on my back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I wanted to say too that we're talking about reading, but a lot of the reading that I do when I'm not reading in my genre per se is on the craft of writing. I have a bunch of books that I'm actually I read them until I feel like they're not relevant anymore, and then I'll like go on to the next one. So I'm like constantly reading about the craft of writing at the same time that I'm reading some fictional stuff.
Yeah, we didn't talk about nonfiction at all. Do you guys have do you guys read nonfiction while you're writing as well?
Yes, daily.
Oh yeah, you do.
I would just like to say that if you read outside your genre, I believe it makes you a better critique partner. It makes you useful
point.
in a writing group. If you want a writing group that's going to be all people who write your genre that also get along with you, let me know when you manage to accomplish that and what your secret is, because I think it can be a little bit tricky. I mean, even people that I know who have put together groups, they each still have a particular niche. I mean, someone who writes mermaid romance and someone who writes, cowboy ranch romance will have some things in common, but there's going to be differences too. And if you're able to stretch yourself and be able to recognize things like a paragraph that's moving the story forward as opposed to a paragraph that's doing nothing for a piece, and you can give those kinds of critiques and enjoy yourself while you're reading something new. In fact, it might help, because if you're not someone who really is in love with that genre, you might see something that could be overlooked by a super fan of the genre.
I think it's a really great point, really good point, because we all write different genres, and that I think really does make our writing group richer for that.
And I think part of that is too that none of us are competing with each other because we're not writing in the same genre. So I don't have to feel like my writing is worse or better than anyone else's, because we're writing such completely different stuff.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right, great. All right. Before we go and move on to our last segment, since we do read in our genres, and I know that we have people that are listening and watching that are also writers in our genres, do you guys have any suggested reading for the people that are listening?
Well, I'll go. If I mentioned Flannery O'Connor earlier, she is long deceased. She was a writer. She wrote, she was a Southern Catholic woman who wrote short fiction. I was raving about her in some earlier episodes because that was the time that I was heavily reading her. And then John Updike, but you have to be careful because he is not a Christian or a clean writer. The Maple stories follows one couple throughout. Stories would come to him about this particular couple. Those, if I recall correctly, do not have anything that would, scandalize your grandmother. And that's my two that I recommend for shorts.
All right. What about you, Tina?
I feel kind of bad because I have this whole long list.
Go for it.
Because I write, I have partial manuscripts in 4 different genres right now. So the short story I'm working on right now is, I guess, adventure fiction. And so White Fang and Call of the Wild by Jack London are some of the books that inspired that. And of course, Kavik the Wolf Dog. If you haven't read Kavik the Wolf Dog, you've got to read it. It's by Walt Morey. It's my favorite. I just love that book. Okay,
I'm sorry. I just have to throw in here that my kids loved this book called Pickles the Fire Cat. And every time you talk about Kavik the Wolf Dog, I think about good old Pickles the Fire Cat. Like,
it's
my
probably
kids
an
loved that
awesome book.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so then I also write dystopian. So if you want just regular dystopian, like The Hunger Games, Divergent, those are the kinds of things everyone's heard of. Left Behind by Jerry B. Jenkins is some Christian dystopian. And you can Google Christian dystopian fiction, and there's a lot of unknowns out there that I don't know if I want to recommend them because I haven't read a lot of them. So there's that. So then I'm writing a thriller also, and so some thrillers in the Christian genre. 3 by Ted Decker. That was actually made into a movie that you could actually watch. Ted Decker has cornered the market on Christian thrillers, I think. I would say that he is the Stephen King of Christian fiction. So like when I looked up Christian thrillers, it was like Ted Decker, and then a few by Frank Peretti. So This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti is really a really awesome book. I really recommend that. And then historical fiction, I'm writing a Civil War historical thing. So Civil War era stuff like Cold Mountain by Charles Fraser, Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane, and Gone with the Wild by Gone with the Wild. Gone with the Wind. It was Call of the Wild. Exactly.
What are you reading, Tina? What genre?
It's about a civil war that takes place between 2 wolf packs.
Okay, that's a great story idea. Margaret Mitchell, Gone with the Wind.
Okay, and I must say, the book is better than the movie when we're talking Gone with the Wind.
Yes.
I heard about Gone with the Wind growing up, and I read the book, and then I saw the movie, and it was my first ever experience with something like that, and I was so upset about how horribly the movie was 4 hours long, and it still just did not even touch the book. So anyway,
have you seen that meme on Facebook? And it looks like an iceberg, but it's a castle. And then the part that's above the water, it says the movie, and the part that's below the water says the book.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I saw the movie first, Gone with the Wind, and then read the book, and still was like, this book is so much better than the movie. So, yeah.
Rhonda, who do you recommend for us?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Tina, on your list, except for the Ted Decker book, and Cabbage the Dog, I've read every book on your list there.
Cabbage the Dog.
You need to go read Cabbage.
If you say so.
If you can find Cabbage the Dog, let us know, because I want to read that one.
Okay, so for my genre, of course, Agatha Christie would be number 1, and MC Beaton, she's fantastic. I love Scotland anyway, and they're all set there, and she's got a really great detective in that one too. But one thing I've started doing is I've been really nostalgic lately for my old books. And so there's a writer named Walter Farley who wrote a series of books called The Black Stallion. And one of them is actually a mystery. And I hated it when I was a kid, even though I liked mysteries. But anyway, so I've got it right here. And I'm going to be reading that one next. But I'm going to go through all of my Nancy Drews. And I've also got a handful of Choose Your Own Adventures. That I used to love that.
I remember those. And I have a ton of Nancy Drew books too. I read them growing up as well. So
yeah.
And the Hardy Boys.
I'd never read any of those.
Me either. My mom bought those for my brother, and they just collected dust on a shelf. He didn't, but I read the Nancy Drew one.
I read everything that I could get my hands on. That's how I became a born again Christian, because I ran out of books.
Wow.
And I picked up I had this pretty white Bible that somebody had given me for my first communion. And I took it out of its little case and I read it. I just front to back like it was a story. I mean, it is a story, but you know what I mean.
Right, you know what you mean. Yeah, that's awesome.
And it has it all.
I might have skipped Leviticus.
Mystery, romance.
Yeah.
Everything you want.
Sex.
Stuff to scandalize your grandmother.
Yes. Well, for me, I made a short list, because if I were to list off all the Christian romance writers, it would be a ridiculously enormous list. So I tried to focus specifically on writers that I felt were, one that I felt was worthy to emulate. And then I also wanted to highlight a couple of indie romance writers that I found. And I would say if I was to pick one writer that has influenced me at least recently, I would have to say Karen Kingsbury, which, even though she writes contemporary, I've read a lot of her stuff, and lately people have been comparing my writing to her, and here's why I wanted to focus on her. One thing you will find in Christian romance is that there is this huge spectrum of how much God fits into the story. A lot of what I've been reading recently is Christian romance where they mention God. They go to church, but it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the character arc. And you guys know from reading my stuff that it has a huge part to do with my stories. My stories, the character arc, each one of them, it all is God involved in their lives. And so that's what you'll find when you read Karen Kingsbury. Her books, the character arcs are entirely influenced by how God is changing them. So if you're looking for that kind of book, I would read Karen Kingsbury. And then a couple indie writers that I found. I believe that Davelyn Spencer is indie. She's the only person that's on this in this publishing house, but I think it's her own publishing house. But Davelyn Spencer writes Western romance, and it's very good. I really enjoy reading her stuff. And another one that I've come across who does not write like me, it's another Western writer. She is much, the stories are much less God-centric, but they are Christian romance, is Carrie Trumbo. Again, she writes shorter, more like, I would call them novella length, but it's nice to be able to read a story quickly. I actually can see the value in having a bunch of short reads out there, like 40,000 words is what I consider short. So so those are the names that I would throw out there right now that I am actively reading and I would suggest. So great. Anything else to add, ladies? Because if not, it's time for the feeding of the backs.
Oh boy.
Great.
Okay. All right, so here is our feedback time. This is part of our episode where we share feedback with each other, but in a unique way. So before the podcast begins, we all sit down for 15 minutes and we do a word sprint with a specific prompt. Today's prompt was 5 different words, and we spent 15 minutes writing it, and then we share it raw live here on the podcast. So when we critique, we're only giving encouraging, positive feedback because these are unedited and raw. If you want to see us do a real writing group type of feedback, then you need to join our Patreon group and watch our postcast, which we do every week as well. So this week, our words were generated on a website, and the words there are 5 of them: reptile, particular, relinquish, confidence, and waterfall. So we had 15 minutes. We did not do a randomizer, I don't think it's someone.
No, we usually do that for the postcast, but I'll happily go first because my piece is, I don't know, really a nothing of a thing. Okay, it'll be easy to follow. Let's put it that way.
All right.
Well, you guys might laugh when you realize the subject matter. Okay. I slip my foot out of the...
I knew it.
Stop! Okay. I slip my foot out of the ironically named croc. It is just as scaly as one of those Everglades-dwelling reptiles. I grimace but refuse to focus there for long because I know that in due time I will emerge from the salon with baby soft feet, my confidence restored. The girl assigned to me has instructed me to soak, and so I slip my feet into warm, gently bubbling water. My tech wears her hair high in a sleek ponytail, and the ebony strands like a waterfall cascade down her neck and back as she throws her head back laughing at something her coworker has said, the exchange lost to me over the hum of the bubbling machines. She has long, impossibly long fingernails and eyelashes. I wonder if she has ever given a pedicure before. I become nervous. Usually the girls here are no-nonsense types whose demeanor and dress indicate they work hard for a living. I am particular about allowing people to touch my feet. I have trust issues, I know, because of the merciless way my older brother would tickle my feet long after I'd screamed uncle, and usually not until after I'd wet my pants. I watch her as I soak. She pulls a phone from her pocket and I scowl. She does as well. Her face crumples into a mask of despair and tears flow from her eyes, carrying along with them rivers of mascara. The woman I know to be the manager approaches. My tech shows her the phone, and the manager puts an arm around her shoulders. They round a corner and are gone. Minutes later, a plain-faced Guffy-looking gal approaches. She says her name is Teresa and explains that Zuzi has been suddenly called away. I have no issue relinquishing my foot to Teresa. The end.
You and your feet.
I don't know. It was topical and timely, and I didn't know what else to write. It was blah. But anyway, I got it done. And I got all the words this time.
I really like the picture in the first line where she's wearing a croc shoe and her foot is like a crocodile in the land of crocodiles.
Yeah. Awesome.
That
Well,
was great. It was a good
thanks,
picture.
guys. Yeah, appreciate that.
How many of the words did you use?
All of them, because
Good
that
job.
relinquish was a killer. Oh, that was horrible. Obviously, I kept trying to like fit it in, and then I kept trying to make like a trio of waterfalls with the rivers of mascara. I'm like, I need to move on. This is like getting to whatever. So I just blah, blah, blah. 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Right.
All right, who's gonna go next? Should I pick someone since I went?
I'll go next because there is a very small theme
Connection.
connection to in our stories.
Wonderful. Let's
and
hear it.
I want to see if you guys could pick it up.
All right.
But you have to concentrate.
Okay.
Yeah, I bet.
There was nothing she could do. The canoe was going over the waterfall. Katrina had fought hard against the current, putting all her strength into each pull of the paddle through the raging water, but it had done no good. The training she had on gauging distance kicked in. This was the one time she could have done without knowing that she was 10 feet from the edge. 9, 8, she closed her eyes.
Oh gosh.
People always talk about their lives passing before their eyes when faced with death, and Katrina had always pictured it as a movie reel of the person's life, starting at childhood and racing through all their memories. Now she discovered it was actually more like one of those electronic picture frames set on shuffle. Random snapshots of moments with no particular order. The time her brother had peed on her stereo in the middle of the night thinking he was in the bathroom.
There it is.
Holding her mom's hand as she passed from this life to the next. Standing in line at the Secretary of State. Visiting the reptiles room at the zoo. Where did that one come from? Strange, she thought, how time had seemed to stop, and the memories popping into her mind were of no particular significance. Her mind moved to earlier that day when Ken had told her she should stay off the river. It was dangerous, he said, because of the storms up north. Once again, her confidence in her own skill had overcome common sense, and she had gone out anyway. Now she was about to pay with her life. Katrina took a deep breath. I relinquished my soul to you, O Lord, she thought. Then she waited for the moment the canoe would go over the falls. Would it launch out into the air, or would it just tilt over and send her plummeting face first to the rocks below? And why was it taking so long anyway? She opened her eyes just a slit to see how close she was. She was still at least 2 yards away. How was that possible? She opened her eyes all the way to find the nose of her canoe wedged tightly between two rocks. She hadn't moved that whole time. She wasn't going to die after all. Of course, that was the moment that her bladder relaxed completely and emptied itself of its contents. Not that it mattered. She was soaking wet anyway. Nobody would notice. Movement to her left caught her attention, and she turned to see Ken and the others standing on the shore, waving their arms at her. She couldn't hear what they were saying over the roar of the water, but she could imagine it. She lifted her hand in acknowledgement, and Ken started to swing a rope over his head. She braced herself to catch it. He let it fly, and like a true cowboy, his aim was sure, and it landed right in front of her. Katrina grabbed the rope and let out a whoop. The sudden movement knocked the canoe loose from the rocks. 3, 2.
Oh, a cliffhanger, literally.
Literally.
I am
I
in
didn't
awe.
plan that.
I am in awe of how you can just write such a complete story in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that was really good, Tina. I agree with Rhonda. And it was really well thought out. Although it was funny when you're like, where did that reptile memory come from? And I was like,
yeah.
writing prompt.
Yep.
Sometimes we really like fit them in there, right?
Mhm.
Like we're like,
Well,
get it
yeah,
in.
did you like her little prayer? Like, how in the heck am I going to fit relinquish in there?
Relinquish,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Great job. That was a really good story, Tina.
Thank you. And did you catch the theme similarities?
Yes, there's like a lot of urine floating around in these stories. I don't know what's going on here.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
All right, I will go next. There's no urine in mine.
Oh, how disappointing.
Yeah. She'd always wanted to swim under a waterfall. You know, just like in all those romantic movies where the heroine and the hero just happen upon a hidden grotto and they just happen to jump in and swim around, ending up behind the waterfall, which of course has just enough space for the two of them to stand in each other's arms and kiss. Not that she had thought about it much, but now that she was here, the idea didn't seem so romantic. Are you sure there aren't any reptiles in there? She asked her husband, Ralph. No. No, you aren't sure, or no, there aren't any. Ralph sighed. No, I'm not sure there aren't any reptiles in there. You mean there could be a crocodile or an alligator to eat us? I have complete confidence in the fact that there are no alligators or crocodiles in Colorado. I am not, however, confident that there aren't other reptiles lurking. Well, what other kind of reptiles are there? In the world? Like all of them? You want me to list them or something? I don't think it's too much to ask, she said. Seriously? Listen, Barb, you're the one who came up with this crazy plan. It wasn't my idea to drive cross country to celebrate our 25th by swimming in some mountainside pond. But it looked different in the brochure. Maybe the brochure didn't show this particular waterfall. She crossed her arms. We should sue them. For what? Misrepresentation or something. And for the reptiles. Who said there were any reptiles? You did. Ralph moaned. Are we doing this or not? I just wanted to do something romantic for our anniversary. Tears welled in her eyes, something she hadn't expected. Her husband reached out and wrapped his meaty arms around her. Love, as long as I'm with you, anything is romantic. Really? She asked through her tear-blurred eyes. Really, he said. Then he pushed her into the pond. But I drove 750 miles for this. We're swimming.
I saw you laughing when you were writing. Was that it?
I like Tired Jen. Bring her out to play more often.
First of all, she wanted romantic with Ralph.
Right.
The name Ralph does not inspire romance, at least not to me.
Right. Okay, be honest, Jen. Was that a true story?
No. No. Not at all. Oh my gosh. But for those of you that are tuning in at 10 o'clock on Thursday, we're not doing today's live. We're recording. It's right now 10 p.m. It's after 10 p.m. on Tuesday night. And for if you've watched the podcast at any length of time, you know that it's way past my bedtime. So that's what Jamie was saying.
She's a little loopy.
I am.
Yeah, I like
a very
that.
Giant pop, trying to keep the caffeine flowing.
I like that edge to your writing with the.
That was fun. I really enjoyed writing that one. Mm-hmm. All right, Rhonda, we saved the best for last.
Oh yeah. Okay. Once again, not a complete story, but you get what you get. All right, I got all 5 words in, so watch for them. Yay. Okay. Buster ran into the room, pet reptile in hand, swooping it through the air. He ran a circuit around the whole floor plan of my living room and kitchen, giving his little dragon the freedom to be all he knew it could be. Villagers, there, Velcor! He swooped his dragon down low to the ground to be sure the flames could reach this particular group of army men, which tonight were townspeople with pitchforks and swords trying to vanquish him. The mighty dragon of the moor could not relinquish his control of the region to these mere humans. I watched my nephew, absorbed in this play, exude enough confidence to assure victory for himself and his chameleon, wishing I was as sure of myself. My dragons are no more real than Buster's are. Maybe if I had the imagination of a 9-year-old boy, I could be as confident. The sound of falling boxes snaps me out of the pity party I'm at risk of falling into. Velcor, the mighty dragon, apparently had to fly into the waterfall to escape the angry mob. I scoot over to them and set them back up for him to knock back down again. Thanks, Ed Julie, he yells breathlessly over his shoulder as he takes another lap on the medieval circuit. The end.
That was so good.
Yes.
Oh, it was really good. You are so good with like relationships, and you could just tell. I love the whole thing of she's like, my dragons are no more real than these. Oh my goodness, that is like so good.
It took like this cute little story about the little boy and took it deep when she started talking about her dragons. Yeah, that was
Is
really
this
powerful.
is this your I don't have a Valentine ski trip woman?
Yeah, same girl. Yep.
Yeah. I really, really can't wait till I get a big fat book of all of these stories. I really appreciate this. Great,
Okay.
great
Thank
work. Goodness. I can't believe you would even pretend to be disappointed with that piece.
Well, you guys have like 2,000 words after 15 minutes, and I've got my 4 paragraphs in a sentence today, so I've improved.
But you say so much with so few words.
Yes. It was wow. That was really, really profound and good. I really like that.
And you
No,
never
thank
would have
you.
named the husband Ralph. Let's just be honest.
Well,
Okay, I like
he
Ralph.
is,
Leave Ralph
he is
alone.
he's the ex-boyfriend in my novel with Mom.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, I
perfect
knew
name
because
for an ex-boyfriend.
you know what? That could be him actually. Like so many years down the line. Like that's how he would treat his wife, maybe.
It could be, but maybe it can't be. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh.
Oh, there she goes with the evil fingers again.
I can't stop.
That's great. Awesome.
That's awesome. All right. Now it's time before we go for us to visit the accountability corner, where we check in with one another to make sure we are moving forward in our journey toward publication. Of course, there's lots of different paths on the way, and you'll see as you watch this podcast that we each have a different path ourselves as well. So let's go ahead and start with it says, Tina, it says you're first. So
Okay. I'm doing so good. I'm really happy with myself.
Yay!
And I think it's the office hours. I know it's the office hours. It's the accountability of having to show up and be present. And even if we're not talking to each other, I know somebody's there. So I can't, go off and pick my nose or anything.
You just do it right there.
And I'm like ahead of where I thought I would be at this point. So I'm just going to keep plugging away and doing. I actually wrote down a schedule because we've been kind of doing longer hours the last week, to where I'm going to do just some random writing, the first sprint, editing the second and third sprint. Then I have a book on craft that I'm going to read during the fourth sprint. Like I actually wrote it all out. So, and then I have a podcast that I've been listening to called, I'm really excited about it. It's called DIY-MFA. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Oh. Of course, my voice went out right when I was trying to say it. Do-it-yourself master of fine arts. That's what it stands for. And so she's like, she actually has a master's of fine arts. And she said, like, she figured out there's 3 components. There's writing, reading, and community. So she has you, like, you do writing, you do reading. And so part of the reading is just what we were talking about today, reading in your genre. She talks about reading the bestsellers, the current bestsellers in your genre. So you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening. She talks about reading about craft, and she talks about community, which I have with you guys. So I've kind of broken down my time according to this pie chart that she has on her website. So
very interesting.
That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. How about you, Jamie?
I reached my goal of showing up every day for the office hours. I've also been staying for the extra little bit on the tail end, with the exception of when I've had obligations for my children's education. So I have been really happy with my progress. Also, I've solved some sticky plot things in that book I've been editing. It's so funny. I just keep thinking about filing your nails. And I don't know if it's because that story that I wrote, but I feel like that's what I'm doing to my book. Like I'm really shaping it as I go through and do this edit. And every time I kind of overcome something that just doesn't feel right in the story, it really propels me to keep going. I would like to do as Tina is doing and kind of schedule out my time a little better. I'm not going to commit to having that done for next week. I just really need to keep doing what I'm doing and get through this and then maybe have a reevaluation. But once again, I will commit to showing up every scheduled day and putting in the time and getting through this book so that I can move on. I am officially past the murky middle, and now I'm just trying to make sure that I've got everything all wrapped up. And so happy day. Now, Jen, you brushed on your goals a little bit earlier. Did you want to jump to Rhonda, or did you want to go ahead and discuss your accountability?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I'm super disappointed in myself, but I'm trying not to be hard on myself. So, but I need to have my February goals done by next week. So by the next, I need to have book 3, this round of edits done, and I need to have a cover for book 2. So that's my goal. But yes, again, office hours have been amazing. I got a lot done today. We had a lot of silence in our office hours today because we were all working really hard on stuff. So that was good. So yeah, I'm just going to keep up with the office hours. And my goal for next week is to have book 3 round of edits done and book 2 cover done. How about you, Rhonda?
Well, my goal that I talked about last week was to have our Pinterest page up. And if today was Thursday, I would have it done. But I'm almost done with it. I just need to ask you guys a question or two, so we can do that tonight.
Ooh, fun.
And I will have it done by Thursday when this airs. So there was that. But then I probably should have mentioned this during the What's Up segment. But my cousin and I we're putting together a program for the Historical Society. You guys know her, Sarah. You and Tina know her, Jamie. And what it's going to be is it's going to be a creative nonfiction course geared toward genealogy or historical stories. And so anyway, there's a lot to it. But anyway, so tomorrow I will be missing part of office hours because I need to go talk to some people at the museum about that. But then I guess my personal goal is to have the outline and all the paperwork that they need done by next week so that we can get started that in the spring. So,
All right.
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
I am excited.
Yeah, that's a new goal. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed to our Patreon page, you need to go over there and do that now because we are about to leave here and have some more hijinks in our postcast where we have already shared with each other some fully edited pieces and we will be giving full-on critique. So if you have not already, head over to Patreon, search for Christian Indie Writers, and you will find us and join us for all the fun. Don't miss out. Thank you, ladies. It was fun tonight.
Fun.
Thanks for keeping me awake. So this concludes the Christian Indie Writers podcast. Thank you for joining us. And until then, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.